Okay, so first off, we are going to look at what is called interval notation, which we have seen before, but I want to also go back over interval notation because part of our solutions is graphing it on a number line. If I have x greater than 4 on a number line, we put the number 4, and instead of using open circle, what do we use? Brackets and parentheses. Since it's greater than, not greater than or equal to, we use a parentheses. Now I want us to get in the habit of when we have an inequality, instead of saying, oh, x is greater than, therefore we shade to the right, let's get in the habit of taking a value on the number line, plugging it in. If it's true, we shade towards it. If it's not true, we shade away from it. So someone pick a value. 6 is the first one I heard. 6 is on this side. Now if I plug 6 in, the inequality would be 6 greater than 4. Is that a true statement? Yes, it is. Therefore, we shade this way. That would be your solution on that line. In interval notation, it would be 4 to what? Infinity. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay? Yes.
Is the 4 bracketed? No.
The 4 should be parenthesis as it is. Now, we have linear inequalities, which is straightforward solving linear inequalities. On the homework, if they say solve the inequality, you simply solve it and then write the solution in interval notation. You don't have to write it on a number line. Okay? So, for example, I'm just going to make this up. Solve for x for the inequality. This is example number 1. We have 0 less than or equal to x plus 3 divided by 2 less than 5. So we multiply by 2. You can write it like this if you want. Multiply everything by 2. That would still give us 0 less than or equal to, the 2's cancel there, would be x plus 3 less than 10, correct? And then we subtract 3 from both sides. So then when we subtract 3 from all parts, we get negative 3 less than or equal to x, which is less than 6. In interval notation, we have it's equal to a negative 3, so negative 3 is a solution. So do we have bracket or parentheses at negative 3? Bracket. So we have bracket negative 3, comma, up to, that's supposed to be a comma, up to 7 with a parenthesis. Like we had to this part right here. Where is it? Number 1. That's a compound inequality, correct? Okay, absolute value inequalities. These are going to be applied to real world situations. Not today, but on Thursday we'll look at these. What we're going to do, you've probably seen how to solve these, but it's important to know why we're going to solve them the way we do. So we're going to go through an example on a number line and then try to come up with solutions of what would fit the inequality situation, then make some generalizations and go from there. Okay? So, for instance, let's say if I give you the absolute value of x is less than or equal to 3. In words, that would be what? 3. So what numbers distance from 0 are less than or equal to 3? Let's make a number line, And can anyone give me solutions to, just give me specific examples of numbers whose distance from 0 is less than or equal to 3? Yeah, Lily?
Well, positive and negative 3.
Very good. -3 and +3 would be solutions. Any others? Yeah. Zakia.
2.
2, right? -2 as well.
Yes.
What about -1?
Yes.
What about 0?
Yes.
All together, are we filling in that within there?
Yes.
Okay? So that would be our solutions, all the values from -3 to +3. If we put that, that would be a compound inequality. So coming back to here. Let's break this up into 2 parts. First, just this part from -3 and greater. Okay, that would be what as an inequality? X would be what relative to -3? If we just deal with this part, X is greater than or equal to -3, correct? Now, that's not all the solution. The solution is actually the intersection between that and that red part, correct? And that red part would be X what? Less than or equal to +3. Do you agree it's the intersection? So as the solutions where they intersect, which means we use the and as a conjunction, meaning it has to be true for the first one and the second one. So now let's look at the pattern. When we get an absolute value inequality, it's a less than or equal to. First, we get an and as our conjunction, correct? And we also want to look at what's happening mechanically. Within both inequalities, what happened to the absolute value bars? It disappeared. So let's write down what we have here. First, because it was a less than or a less than or equal to symbol, the conjunction was and, correct? Does everyone agree with that? 2, for both the inequalities, what will we do on the left-hand side of the inequalities? We did what with the absolute value bars? Drop them. The absolute value bars dropped the absolute value bars. Does everyone agree with that? In the red equation, we dropped the absolute value bars. Was there anything else we did? Careful on the red one.
Oh.
We kept the sign the same. Okay? But in the blue equation, we flipped the sign and made -3 negative, correct? So one equation, the red equation, A, that one's I'm calling the red equation, even though I wrote second, I'm calling that A, since that's the easier one. All you did was drop the absolute value bar, keep everything else the same. Keep all the same. But for the blue equation, what do? Flip sign. Very good. When I say flip sign, I mean the inequality sign. And make negative the right-hand side of the equal sign. So for absolute value inequalities, we have, if it's a less than or equal to, it's an and. We drop the absolute value bars when we create the two inequalities. One of the inequalities, we keep the right-hand side the same as well as the inequality sign the same. And the other, a little more challenging or complicated inequality, the blue one here, we flip the sign and make the negative side of the inequality negative. Now, what if we have x, I want to go to black, x is greater than, absolute value of x, is greater than 5. So what number's distance from 0 is greater than 5? What about 5? No, but just greater than 6, 7, 8, and so on. So that would give us a solution that looks like that, correct? right? That would be all the values at distance from 0 is greater than 5. What about negative 5? Negative 5 would not be a distance from 0, but greater than 5 would be what? Values that's supposed to be at negative 5. Less than negative 5, like negative 6, negative 7, etc., correct? You agree all the distance of those is greater than 5, right? Negative 6, negative 7, etc. Is everyone with me on that? The values distance from 0 that is greater than 5 would be negative 6, negative 7, etc. Correct? So look at that. We have a compound, or we have a multiple interval notation like we saw before, correct? And is that going to be an and conjunction or an or? Or, because a number is on the left-hand interval or the right-hand interval. This one over here, let's go in order with the nicer or easier ones. That right there would be what as an inequality? X is what? Greater than 5. What do you notice algebraically? What is the only thing we did from the top inequality to the bottom? Drop the absolute value sign. Is that exactly the same as in the other problem?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. This part over here, what would that be?
X is less than negative 5.
X is less than negative 5. Which is exactly the same procedure as we did with the less than symbol, correct? Flip the sign, make it negative. However, that is not going to be and, it's not the intersection, it's the union of them, or both of them, which is or. So, what is our conjunction for greater than? Greater than or equal to, what's our conjunction? Not and, but or. Very good. And the other steps, are they exactly the same? The other steps are exactly the same as on the last page. Okay, there's a cute little mnemonic device called Igor Land. This is a helpful way to remember what's or and what's and. So we're going to write Igor Land. I stands for if. It's a greater than symbol. That's what G stands for. If greater than, it's going to be what? An or. If I stands for if, G stands for greater than, it's going to be an or conjunction. And that will tell you that the solution will be in two directions, right? Going off to negative and positive infinitely accordingly. L stands for less than, and therefore, what symbol do we use for less than? An and. Less than, we use and. Igor Land is a mnemonic device to help you with that. Okay, any questions? Now, we want to go from given a number line solution, put it into absolute value inequality. So, write, whoops, I'm going to do this in black, sorry. Write an absolute value inequality to represent the interval. They're going to give you a interval or intervals on a number line, and they want you to write the absolute value inequality notation for it. Essentially the backwards, right? Given the graph, go to the inequality. So let's start off with, let's say if I have negative 4, positive 4 with brackets and shaded in between. Okay, so if we look at this, we want absolute value inequalities. So first off, we look, and this is going to be important to recognize, that the center value is 0, correct? And the distance of all of the numbers from 0, which is the absolute value of the difference of them, all numbers minus 0, is what? Less than or equal to 4. Of course, we'd simply just write that as the absolute value of x is less than or equal to 4. But why do you think I put that 0 in there?
So now you know where you're coming from.
We know where the middle point is because they're going to have ones where it's not at and the middle value is not at 0. Okay? So this is our midpoint value. That's our midpoint value. And what is 4? So 4, that number right there, is the distance from what? From the midpoint to the endpoint. Yeah, in this case 0 to 4. Distance from midpoint to endpoint. I just wrote mid and end in the interest of space. Okay, so let's try. If I give you -6 and -2, and we have brackets facing out, bracket facing out. First, absolute value of x minus, what do we put on the inside, Malik?
Would be 4.
What, careful, what? Oh, well, first off, what is your quote-unquote midpoint?
4.
Careful?
Negative 4.
-4, right? -4 is halfway between -6 and -2. Now, it's a little more challenging. What do you do to find the midpoint? Add the values, divide it by 2, correct? Okay, it is an OR statement since it's in two different, the intervals are not overlapping. So is it going to be a less than or a greater than? A greater than? Do we have parentheses or bracket? Bracket. So is it a greater than or a greater than or equal to? Greater than or equal to. Very good. And then the number from there is the distance from the midpoint to both endpoints. And in this case, what's that distance?
Or would it be negative?
Well, remember, distance is absolute, right? Negatives are relative distances, so the answer would be +2. And then let's make it look a little nicer. We have x plus 4, absolute value of 2. That would be your answer.